Silent Hill 2 is a game about James Sunderland looking for his dead wife Mary. While looking for her, he runs into a woman named Maria. Maria looks just like Mary, but with a different outfit and hairstyle. Maria exists as a manifestation of a haunted town here to confront James with his guilt and his mistakes. She not only reminds him of who he has lost, but also his unfulfilled desires, of how he felt stuck with his dying partner, of how he hated her because he wanted his life back, and his guilt at ever feeling that way about someone he loved so much. James is a complicated character that Silent Hill 2 is keen on exploring. But I don't want to talk about James. I want to talk about Maria. Born from a Wish is the name of a supplementary story added to later releases of Silent Hill 2, such as the greatest hits and the HD collection versions. This prelude follows Maria leading up to her appearance in the main game at Rosewater Park where James first sees her. By making Maria the player character, Born from a Wish finally considers the horror of Maria's situation from her side. It's an exploration of a character who exists as a hypersexualized version of someone's deceased partner. A character whose whole existence is a manifestation of a haunted town made to torment another person. Imagine being birthed into the husk of a dead woman dressed as Christina Aguilera at the 1999 Teen Choice Awards. Like, yeah, it sucks for James, but imagine how she feels. When a ghost or monster manifests itself in a horror game, it's almost exclusively seen from the lens of the other side. That is, from the perspective of the character seeing the manifestation. But I think the truly interesting perspective is seen through the eyes of the manifestation itself. What's it like being created to scare or torment someone? Do these monsters you face have some sense of self or not? In most games it's easy to ignore because what you're running from either can't speak or doesn't even look human. But these questions become a lot harder to blow off when the monster starts talking back to you, starts following you, wanting to be around you, wanting you to protect them. And this existential question of what it's like to be a manifestation of Silent Hill seems to be at the heart of the horror of Born from a Wish. This perspective goes on to inform all the horror in the game. You now get to look at everything in the town from the perspective of a character who's actually part of it. The enemies, for example, are way more sinister from the perspective of Maria, because to James they're monsters, but to Maria they're doppelgangers. As opposed to being a fully fledged body double of James's wife, these creatures feel like they're cobbled together from loose parts, not fully gestated or something. For her, this would be frightening not just because it's a monster, but also because it's like staring at another failed version of her likeness, confronted with something that isn't very different from what she is. She's the same as them, at least cut from the same material. Beyond this, the town also seemingly programmed her to feel afraid of dying.
But I'm scared to die. I'm so afraid of pain.
She was created by the town and imbued her with these fears and ideas. She isn't saying this to mess with James or anything, she's just by herself in this scene. She is genuinely afraid of getting hurt. I guess the town needed to make her fear death to get her to play along. Maria's world is one that shifts the perspective from someone entering the town for the first time to a character who was born in it, which is just infinitely more engrossing to me. And it doesn't really feel like the horror of such a character is explored nearly enough in media, although there is a character from Silent Hill 1 whose plight is similar to Maria's. In the first game, on your way through the town, you eventually run into a nurse that you find hiding in a hospital named Lisa Garland. Throughout the game, you keep running into her, or waking up with her by your side, until a part towards the end when you run into her one last time, which leads to the best scene in the entire game. Lisa confronts you in the hospital. She's scared and asking for help, asking for you to save her because she realizes she's not another person trapped in the town like you. She's instead another monster that's part of it. She doesn't know what she is or what to do, so she reaches out to you, at which point you push her away. A short FMV cutscene plays with absolutely no dialogue. She starts bleeding and stumbling towards you. As you shut the door behind you, she's crying and hitting it from the other side. Lisa's story is about being part of the town, about being stuck there and not wanting to be a monster, about reaching out to the only other person you can find for help. But ultimately, she can't be helped. She's stuck here, she's the same as the monsters she sees all around her. It makes a lot of sense that I find both her and Maria so compelling because their struggle is a very similar one. Harry, the protagonist of the first game, and James both get the chance to leave, but they're stuck here, they're part of the town, which speaks to an overwhelming sense of isolation experienced by Maria. Like being made to fear death, she's also seemingly programmed to want to be around people.
I want to find somebody. I don't like being alone. But is there anyone left alive?
There are barely any people in this little ghost town, and she is stuck here until she dies. Maria seems to have this in her head, but it's also not fully realized. She seems to know it, but doesn't want to accept it.
Maria, you're...
Anyway, that's just what you think. You don't really know anything. That's fine.
This is her not wanting to believe that she isn't her own person, not wanting to accept that she's stuck here just like the monsters are. With Lisa, though, when she realizes this, she sort of cracks. She breaks down emotionally and physically, her internal realizations seeming to break her sense of self apart externally too, making her look like the monster she accepts she's become. Lisa's story ends there, but for Maria there is an ending in the main game where James leaves with her, although it's punctuated with a coughing fit on her way out, implying that she's sick. To me, this is meant to show that her existence outside the town is unsustainable, that she can't have a life of her own because she isn't her own person. At least Lisa was a person before becoming part of Silent Hill, but Maria was born here. She's tied to the town from birth and also seemingly restricted to being with James. She seems instilled with this constant need to be around him. It's a situation where she's subjected to a very temporary existence of complete dependency before most likely dying just like Mary did, leaving her in a permanent state of seclusion from other people and showing her lack of freedom to really live for herself. Born from Wish actually feels like it's a lot about isolation and lack of free will. Maria seems programmed to want to be around others, but her life is restricted to the town, which is at odds with that need. And in this scenario, the world she inhabits is almost entirely barren in terms of people. You actually never see another person in the whole game, although you do meet another person. Ernest is just a guy behind a door, and he might be one of my favorite characters ever. In Born from Wish, you eventually find him in this big abandoned house. I'm just in love with the idea of a character you can interact with but never get to see. It's an interesting way to add another person while still keeping their presence restricted. They also did this in Silent Hill Homecoming. I know that game is not very well liked, but the character that you talk to in the hotel behind the broken door was really cool. In Born from Wish, despite being the first and only person you talk to, you never actually get to see his face. He's always kept closed off and distant, never really available for Maria to connect with completely as a person. He moves from behind one locked door to another inexplicably, making him feel like he's behind every door. Like his presence is connected to the broader sense of the house rather than being a ghost in the house, constricted to a singular point in space at a time. He's always behind a door and always keeping you from feeling like you're actually there with him. Except that you do open the door eventually, near the end of the game. And that is probably the densest moment in the whole scenario.
Okay.
When Maria opens that door at the end, I feel something incredibly draining happening. It's this intensely defeating moment for a character, you know? She opens the door and realizes how distant and fragile her relationship with Ernest was, how empty his presence was in the first place, how he's never really there to begin with. This is the first person she finds and she doesn't even get to greet them. It feels like the process of opening the door itself collapses everything, like it collapses this tenuous connection she had with him in a matter of seconds. Kind of like a Schrodinger's cat scenario, where the act of observing, of checking to see if he actually is there, is what breaks his faint existence. It wasn't about a twist that he was a ghost the whole time. It was that she knew that he was a ghost the whole time, but she wanted so badly to be wrong.
Ernest, can I open this?
This is a dead end. There's nothing beyond here.
I know.
In that moment, I feel Maria also realizes how fragile she is. She was a ghost talking to another ghost. She feels through the disappearance of Ernest a sense of her own flimsiness, her own weak grasp on existence. She only came into being because of James, and just as easy as it was for Ernest to collapse, she could also just dissolve like him. She's confronted with her own unsustainability. It's fascinating, horrifying, but more than anything, just defeating. She doesn't say anything, she doesn't even step through the door, she just walks away. It's amazing, but more than that, it's small and thoughtful. It's not the end of Born from Wish, though. After leaving the house, you get one final sequence of the game. Maria seems to contemplate ending it, but ultimately doesn't. It's hard to tell whether or not she even has a choice here. She was created to fear death and pain, so it wouldn't be that weird if she was unable to even go through with it. But it also makes sense that she would have the option. I mean, why was she given the gun in the first place? Did the town give it to her? Even more interesting, why does she start out with just one bullet at the very beginning of the game? The gun doesn't start empty and it doesn't start with a full round. It's just that one shell when you start. It's almost like the town is giving her an exit option, an out, but also knows that she won't take it. Or maybe it's testing her, auditioning her. It feels like everything we just played through was the town's way of getting her ready for the events of the main game, making sure she's prepared to take on the role. She's been cast to play this part and it's finally her cue. At this point she's made up her mind, she gets into character and walks on stage, ready for her opening lines.
James.
Mary? No, you're not.
Do I look like your girlfriend? My name is Maria.
Born from Wish is not only a great game that explores a fascinating character, but it also gives much more to replaying the main game too. The next time you play Silent Hill 2 and get to Rosewater Park and see Maria, you have to contend with the fact that she had an existence before that moment. That she's more than just a ghost, that she's more than just a monster, and that she's probably just as afraid as you.